Alright, man, peace. So as many of you brothers know that listen to my channel, coming into this past Sunday's NFL Championship weekend, I predicted when it comes to the NFC Championship game that the Rams would be able to defeat the Saints. But I had no idea that it would come down to a play call or to a referee's call that would be so controversial. Now, when I first saw the play, I assumed that he was going to throw the flag. But when he didn't, I said maybe he saw something that I didn't see. Or maybe he didn't see something that I saw. Either way, there's no doubt in my mind that the fact that the referee chose to not throw the flag is definitely the main reason why the Saints lost, because they almost literally would have been in position to win the game with about 5 seconds left. But beyond that, the game should never have been that close in the first place. The Saints got out to a 13-0 lead at home in the quote-unquote Superdome, where they were supposed to have an almost unassailable advantage. Drew Brees did not play well. As I've stated in previous videos, he's an all-time great quarterback, but to be honest with you, he's never truly ever impressed me. I've always viewed him as a quarterback that got the most out of his ability. But being on the level of the other great quarterbacks that I've seen, no. Never seen that. That's why I've always been willing to debate over whether or not he's a top 10 quarterback of all time. I think that after this season, I would probably have to put him in that top 10, but he would just scratch into the top 10. Just scratch into there. And he's never been the same since the Cowboys whooped his ass a few weeks ago. I believe it was back on Thanksgiving night. He has not been the same since then. Beyond that, if you were to tell me prior to the game, because for those of you brothers who heard my preview video, what did I state? I said that in order for the Rams to win the game, Todd Gurley, C.J. Anderson would have to have big games. Sean McVay would have to get out of his own way. Well, actually, Sean McVay showed his brilliance because he was able to intervene in how the game went. And really, it's most likely why they won the game, because I saw from early that something was very, very wrong with Todd Gurley. Now, according to him, he's saying that the reason why he hardly played is because he just didn't have it. I just don't see that, because even though when he was playing, he wasn't right, he was barely in the game from the first series. So I have to wonder if something happened to him this past week where McVay said, you know what, you're going to have to sit your ass down for the most part. We're going to use you in spurts, but you're just not right. I don't know if something happened to him, but he definitely was not in the game. He was dropping passes and everything. And if you were going to tell me that the LA Rams' most talented offensive player was barely going to play, and they still were going to win the game in overtime, I never would have believed you. There's no doubt in my mind after that game that even though the Saints should have won, the Rams were actually the better team. And I'm sure that a lot of people are not going to like that. Of course, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
2 years in a row, it's a brutal loss. They had that heartbreaking Minnesota Miracle, and now obviously the refs no call on what should have been defensive PI. Damian Woody's still here with us. Stephen A., what was your reaction?
My reaction was obviously, as Max alluded to last week, when you make a prediction, you want to be right. And I didn't feel I was wrong. I feel like the Saints got robbed. I feel like my prediction was right on point.
Cool.
I mean, I was discussing, but in the same breath, I'll scale back on that because I don't want to take any credit away from what I saw the Rams do.
The only thing that I can guess from watching the replay is that possibly the referee believed that the ball was uncatchable and that it was so poorly thrown that the receiver would never have had a chance to catch it, no matter if the defender hit him or not. And due to the fact that it was an NFC Championship game in a pivotal moment, the referee was unwilling to throw the flag there. And we see plays like this occur probably 25 times a season, where the cornerback or the defensive back will just run right through the receiver and the referee will issue a play on. This just seemed to have happened at an inconvenient time. But the only thing that I can assume by watching this play and no flag being thrown is that the referee assumed that it was an uncatchable ball.
Rams do, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, because I was incredibly impressed. And like I told you, Keith Talib being there was going to make a difference. Look at Michael Thomas's numbers, and that should tell you the whole story. We will get into that a little bit later on in the show. But there's no question that it was a highway robbery here. The reality of the situation is that he was mugged. The ball was about 4 yards away when he got hit. It was clearly pass interference. Nobody's denying it. And the reason why you can call it a robbery is simply because of this reason.
Yes, this was definitely a robbery. I can't say that it wasn't. And as strange as it might sound, once again, I still believe that the Rams are the better team. I don't think that the Saints would have even a modicum of a chance against the Patriots had they played.
If the penalty gets called, it's a 3rd and 10, all right? LA had just used its second timeout. It's a 3rd and 10. You call a pass interference. It's automatic first down. You are already in field goal position at the 13-yard line. This would have put it at about the 3-yard line, if not the 1-yard line. You're right there, and you simply run out the clock until time expires. Los Angeles never sees the ball again. You kick the field goal. The game is over. It's that simple, because you would not have given them an opportunity to even have the ball. You could have took a knee for crying out loud and just let the clock wind down. But that's not what happened. And the thing that really annoys me about it is that the NFL will sit up there, and this is not official. Listen, human error is a part of it. But to not allow the call to be reviewed in the last 2 minutes of the game, of a postseason game, is just egregious to me.
Well, Stephen A. Smith, is there some type of bylaw in the NFL rulebook that states that they should have different rules or different parameters in the postseason? Why would that be egregious if it was not egregious to you all throughout the regular season? Now, all of a sudden, in the last 2 minutes of the game, they're supposed to reevaluate every judgment call? No.
I mean, you got all of this technology. You're talking about the game being safer. You're talking about getting things right. You're talking about the importance of a game. Well, guess what? As important as regular season games are, the postseason is even more important. And to not allow the call to be reviewed, to me, is the most egregious part of all of this. That's why I don't even look at the official.
Well, you know what, Stephen A., you have to be very, very careful with that Pandora's box. Because what that means is that in the last 2 minutes, you're going to have coaches wanting to have holding calls reviewed, or holding calls that were not made reviewed so that they can be turned to holding, right? Because presumably you're going to have defensive coaches and defensive coordinators that are going to want to have certain plays reviewed, just like offensive coaches. So now they're going to say, you know what? That should be offensive pass interference. You guys should look at that again. Then the other coaches say, no, that should be defensive pass interference. You should look at it again from this angle. That's why they don't want to open that Pandora's box when it comes to judgment calls.
I look at the league office. To me, this is on the league office because you don't have a rule in place that would allow for that call to be reviewed. That's my problem with it.
It was the most egregious missed call in the history of football, given the level of significance of the game.
I have to think about that, but I'm not quite sure. I think the tuck rule is right there.
The point of leverage in the game, because if they get the call right, the game's over. And the fact that they missed several things on that call. I mean, not only, first of all, it should have been an interception. The defensive player just turns his head around. That was a poorly thrown ball from Drew Brees.
Well, in order for him to turn his head around, he would have had to have been in the proper place at the proper time. The reason why he ran through the receiver was because he was not in the proper place. So he panicked and he tried to run and he ended up running through the receiver. That's what happened. What was it Shannon Sharp said? He said, panic is what happens when you don't know what the hell you're doing.
Brees. But he didn't. He never looked at the ball. The contact was before the ball arrived. That's two right.
Yeah, that's like textbook pass interference. Like that that's just ridiculous. That's why I'm saying the only thing the referee could have possibly said is that the ball was uncatchable. That's it.
Right there. And three, it was helmet to helmet. Like, how many things can you miss in plain view at that moment of importance in a game? And yet, Saints fans don't have a right to be mad right now.
I agree.
Sorry, just because it was egregious and it happened in an incredibly important moment. On the previous possession for the Rams, you had a face mask that was naked, like to the naked eye, you could see it was blatant. I saw it in real time. Ooh, face mask. They did not call it. As a result of them not calling the face mask, it was not essentially first and goal, which would
not only that, he twisted the face mask. So that's the 15-yard penalty right there.
Would give the Rams an overwhelming probability of scoring a touchdown.
But then again, he's already within the 10-yard line, so that probably would have just been half the yardage to the goal.
A touchdown at that point in the game. And you know what? Them's the breaks. And when this happened, I thought, okay, now that missed call is kind of negated. Yeah. Now, that was not as blatant. The point of leverage was not as high. You'd have to assume the touchdown, whereas the other way, it's like that game's over. So I get why Saints fans are mad. But if they really think about it, them's the breaks. It was a horrible missed call. You could argue that you can't say, well, that's the reason you lost, but you can say, had they not missed the call, we win. Right. And yet you can't complain.
I need to come back to that. Go ahead, David.
I always try to pull back the curtain and let people know from a player's perspective what it feels like. Imagine you have to go through training camp. Okay, practice after practice. Build.
Imagine that, Stephen A. Smith. I'm reporting a training camp sometime in July, August. I'm out there on the field, huffing and puffing. No honey buns. Barely get to drink some water. I'm here getting tackled, pushing everybody every which way. Play all season, 16 games. Have some blind-ass referee tell me I can't go to the Super Bowl. Made me want to bite him on his head.
Building up to this point. You get to the regular season. Game after game after game. Meetings. All these things that culminate you being at this moment as a player. And for it to come down, you're literally on the verge of going to the Super Bowl. And it comes down to someone or something that's out of your control. All a player can ask is just, let me do my job. Let me control the outcome of this.
Right, but you know what, Damian Woody, in all seriousness, you know how you're compensated for your sacrifice? By getting paid handsomely. At the end of the day, the NFL is an entertainment league. The NBA is an entertainment league. Bad calls are a part of the package. As long as you put your best foot forward and you're compensated with your 7-figure, 8-figure contracts, you can't complain. You can be upset for a moment, but you take your ass home to your palatial estate with your beautiful big booty wife, and then you got the beautiful big booty concubine in the apartment that you're providing for her also. That's your compensation.
But you had a ref who your only job, you right there, your only job is to call it like you see it in that moment in time.
He did. That was the problem. He did call like he saw it. His real job is to call it how it happened. That's the job of a good official. Call it how it happened. Don't call it how you see it. Call it how it happened. A good official is trained how to see things.
And you failed. You failed in that moment in time.
Okay.
You cannot, as a player, do you know how hard it is to get back to that moment, to a championship game? It's literally the hardest game that you can lose. It's the worst game that you can lose, period. And as a ref, you failed in that moment of time to cost me an opportunity to go to a Super Bowl.
I'm disagreeing with you somewhat, but I respect the fact that you played and I didn't. So bear with me on this, where I'm coming from. The official is watching it from a particular angle. Now, that's your only job. So we understand you made a mistake that you shouldn't have made. But it's conceivable because of the trajectory of the ball and the position with which the referee is watching it from, that he might have missed it. He should have, but that happens. To me, it's more...
He didn't miss anything, Stephen A. Smith. He saw exactly what happened. It's just how he interpreted it. It's very clear, at least to me, that he believed that the ball was uncatchable.
More egregious on a part of the league than even the
Now, maybe what he didn't see, he probably did not see the helmet-to-helmet contact.
official to have all of these reviewable plays throughout all the entire game, but somehow in the last 2 minutes of the game, it's not reviewable. But now, to get back to your point.
Wait a minute, hold on. One more second. You have one job to do.
I agree.
I have a job. We always say in New England, do your job.
Right.
You have one job. I understand. Listen, this is an opportunity for me to get to a damn Super Bowl.
Right.
You blow.
Stephen A. Smith, you really starting to get me upset. You really starting to get me aggravated. You antagonized me on TV. I live, I breathe, I bleed for this. I eat for this. I drink for this. I shit for this. Stephen A. Smith, you're treading on real thin ice right now, okay? You sound like a cupcake to me. I'll tear through a cupcake.
And you blow this whole opportunity.
But I'm saying my problem is more with the league than the official, because human error is automatic. It's never going to be flawless. There's always going to be human error. But to have the technology that you have existing in today's day and age, for it to be as implemented and used as excessively as the NFL is known to use it, but to not have a rule in place that allows for calls in the last minute to be reviewed is more egregious to me than even the official.
Stephen A. Smith, we cannot review every holding call, every PI call. It just can't happen, man. I could see maybe calls that might be considered personal fouls, like an egregious face mask, but other than that, no.
I want to get to your point. Goff runs for, 3 yards. He runs down to the 2. Let's say, for example, that face mask was called and they score a touchdown, right? then instead of having 20 max, or they have 24, right? New Orleans still has the ball, and that call that was so egregious still would have put the Saints in a position to score the touchdown.
Very likely to score.
Exactly, because they would have been like at the 3 or 2 yard line. So my point is, I argue that point with you because to me, that non-pass interference call was so egregious.
Let me be clear.
I think they still would have won no matter if Los Angeles scored their touchdown.
That is possible, which is why it's more egregious than a missed face mask, which not everyone saw, right? The point in the game, more stuff had already happened. The result of the game was more decided by that call, etc. Right. I'm merely pointing out the refs giveth and the refs taketh away.
Agreed.
So for Saints fans to complain when it was happening both ways.
Yeah, but this determined the outcome.
Yeah.
This determined the outcome.
Right, but every play call, every referee call determines the outcome. What we do is we accentuate the calls that happen down the stretch of the game, as opposed to the bad calls that occur in the second or third quarter. Even though if there's a call that affected a Rams drive in the second quarter where they could have scored a touchdown or had a field goal and they ended up having to punt the football, nobody talks about that. But there's still a result where they're not allowed to score either way.
I think this loss was much more heartbreaking than last year's loss. We got to leave it there.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. The Saints are going to have a hard time getting over this one. Especially when you have a quarterback like Drew Brees, who's, 40 years old? And he could conceivably have a huge drop-off next year. It wouldn't shock me. Now, in this modern NFL, they protect the quarterback so much that players like him and Brady, they can play another 2 or 3 years and still be highly effective because they're not going to get hit so much. But every time I see Drew Brees try to drop the football down the field, it looks like he has to set his feet 5,000 times because he just does not have the arm strength. I mean, his arm strength just always seems to be so compromised. But anyway, once again, congratulations to the Rams. I thought that they were the better team. I truly wish that the Super Bowl was going to be the Rams and the Chiefs because I think that they would have provided another fireworks level game like they had earlier in the regular season. But I also believe that there's some symmetry to this Rams-Patriots Super Bowl matchup. As other analysts have brought forth, the Patriots won their first Super Bowl going against the Rams, the greatest show on turf 17 years ago. So now's the opportunity for some get back. And as I stated in one of the championship game preview videos, we already know how they're going to market this game. It's going to be the old quarterback Brady against the incumbent Jared Goff. It's going to be the old defensive genius, the defensive wizard Belichick, against the offensive wizard, that being Sean McVay. So we'll see what happens. Peace.